So I think what's happening is Donald Trump is literally pulling Bibi Netanyahu and saying you're going to lose your country. Like you lost your internal popularity. You can't hijack this for your own personal stuff. I will help you. On the other side of the conflict with the political stuff. He's already done that, right, by calling for his pardon, whatever. I don't exactly know how that works in Israel, but Donald Trump has called for it, right? And so when you think about, you just said all the donors and everything, the big donors. Okay, I don't mean Miriam, but the big ones, the new ones, the ones that are really helping shape policy. Bill Ackman, Larry Ellison, a few other people. They're very reasonable people when it comes to balance, and I really think President Trump's position is in that narrow balance now, and it's funny that the two extremes are the Hamas, all that, you know, uh, terrorist whatever side, and the right wing of Israel, Smotrich and Ben Gavir are considered as the parallel to that. So the middle is where the Egyptians are, the Qataris, the Saudis, UAE, some of these luminaries I talked about that are big donors, and President Trump. And I think he's gotten the cover for the first time in the last 3 weeks. Doesn't helped by Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and
But
Tucker.
there's one issue, in Nathan Sachs from senior fellow talked about it, and that is, I'll actually read out what he said. But Netanyahu, and I would say 99% of Israelis, don't believe that Hamas will really give up all of its weapons. They could give up some. They've lost much of them in the war,
I
but to give up
disagree.
their
I
personal
disagree.
arms, that seems unlikely. And number
Disagree.
two is that I'll get your thoughts on this. In the peace plan, I'll tell you why I'm mentioning this. In the peace plan, point one says Gaza will become a de-radicalized, terror-free zone. I think those 2 points, it just leaves a lot of loopholes for Israel to continue this in a few months, maybe
I
after
I
Trump
I think loopholes are
presidency
there.
ends.
I think loopholes are there, and Bibi Netanyahu did have a Hebrew oriented speech, not the English, the Hebrew one, where he
Yeah,
says, "Don't worry,
he,
we'll be
he
back
won't.
there." Blah, blah.
He said he won't pull out. Yeah, we won't pull out of Gaza, I think he said.
I don't care what the position that I know is going to work is the mainstream Israeli position. The mainstream Israeli position, the majority. I don't mean the liberals. I mean literally the center. Okay, they are all for getting the hostages back and having some form of rapprochement with a moderate negotiating power that is not Hamas. So I give credit. I really truly believe that the Qataris, the Egyptians, especially now after what happened in Qatar, the Qataris, the Egyptians, to some extent the Turks, Jordanians to a slightly lesser extent, are going to really, really push
Mm.
for the demilitarization. Are you going to get a lone wolf rocket here,
I think
rocket there? Yes, you
Yeah,
are. But
exactly.
the
And I
core
think
is not.
Israel's intentions matter, because when you have that lone wolf act, or that faction, who really controls Hamas is the military arm, military wing, going to listen to the political wing. I think it's not as functional as people would like it to be. So if you do have, there's also the other group, not the Hamas one, the Islamic Jihad or something along those lines. Will
Yeah.
they abide by this peace agreement? Because any mistake could give green light for Netanyahu to continue the war.
Yeah,
But
but I
the
mean,
thing,
Mario, yeah, but sorry, I have to interrupt you. You and
sorry,
I spend a lot of time behind the scenes talking to leaders and all this, right? And I think you and I would agree that when we look at, you know, the Israeli body that we speak to, the Arab body, the US body, etc., 8 out of 10 are where we are now. And the two fringes are getting less and less and less. And when people this whole thing of we got to wrap it up, I don't know, many people say that, right? Megyn Kelly, Donald Trump, a lot of people that wrap it up. That is sentiment. That is sentiment everywhere. If I had to say what is the sentiment globally across the region, definitely in the Gulf, but obviously in the America and all this, is wrap it up. And wrap it up means for everyone. It means this Israeli brutality, also the terrorism. You want a two-state solution? We're going to get a two-state solution. It's got to be demilitarized. And I honestly, for the first time, I feel like there's a path of people being so fed up. And I put the onus on the Arabs to make sure that it's only lone wolves, because you can't control lone wolves, right?
Hmm.
Um, but that's it.
And the responsibility comes to that peacekeeping force. Lastly, what does that mean for the rest of the Middle East? A lot of people are expecting,
Yeah, I.
predicting a
This
war
is
in
good
December
news.
with Iran.
Okay, forget Iran
Exactly.
for a second. Let's talk about
Iran,
Gaza.
you've got Iran and Lebanon. Lebanon, we're seeing potential for Hezbollah to disarm. And the government has voted for Hezbollah to disarm. Hezbollah has been resisting it, asking for Israel to pull out further from Lebanese territory. Israel's still striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, a lot less than before. And in Iran, you've got everyone predicting a new war with Iran. Iran preparing for that war, rearming itself, trying to improve its air defense systems, its missile capabilities, and not even they're not even saying it's a preparation for a new war. They're saying it's a preparation for a continuation of the war that in their eyes hasn't ended. And we've seen the rhetoric pick up again in Iran. How big of an impact do you think the peace deal in Gaza will have on Lebanon and Iran?
Um, I think 3 years ago there was a state within a state in Lebanon. Okay, let's put Iran aside. That
Hezbollah,
was
yeah.
very strong, but it was really a state within a state, and no one really could say anything, right? That obviously that has been shattered completely post the last 2 years and the conflict, etc. Now you have a situation where it's about pride, and the last vestiges of security and keeping the arms, demilitarizing under the Litani River, south of the Litani River. What about the north? What's the purpose of the north if you don't have the president of the south, if you have no border to have to defend, because there's
Mm.
this very big buffer zone. So the excuses are beginning to
The,
dwindle.
the justification for Hezbollah to
Right.
exist are starting to dwindle.
Right.
Is that what you're
But I
saying?
guess, yes, but I guess the last thing, the last vestige is the honor, right? The Hezbollah faction, in my view, I mean, it's not I know too much about it, but they, it's just a matter of honor now, of like letting go, losing everything, and having some form of relevance. Politically, I think they're going to still have that, but having the
Mhm.
arms just in case is this last vestige of honor, and I think that will slowly dwindle when you have more Abraham Accords, when you have a two-state solution emerging from the abyss here. That's why I didn't want to leave
I'm
the
not as
Gaza discussion.
optimistic about I'm not
Right.
that optimistic about the two-state solution. But yeah, I do agree that um,
I
more
am.
and
I'll
more
tell you why.
indicators will pressure Hezbollah to
Right.
give up their weapons and potentially save their honor by having some sort of maybe increased
I
political representation.
let
If
me
it's
let
done
me get back to
gradually
this.
in a way of respect as well, because they do have
Let
a
me
lot of
talk
support in
about
Lebanon to this day.
Okay. Let me talk about the two-state solution. Forget the two-state solution as you and I have known it historically. I'm not talking about that, right? I'm talking about this war and this wrap it up already. Okay, has become a battle cry. You see it in New Zealand, Australia, France, the UK, and
Europe.
recognizing Europe, recognizing Palestine, Canada, recognizing Palestine. What does that mean? It means that there needs to be a solution. Now, that solution can only emerge if Egypt, Turkey, Jordan, Qatar, that regional army really does a good job at demilitarizing that whole area. If they do that, the right wing Israeli faction will have no more excuse either. So you're asking me about the excuse that Hezbollah has of demilitarizing, and I'm saying they're going to slowly dwindle that
But you
excuse.
can't.
Correct,
But
Mario?
you can't
But I think the
Yeah,
same
but if
thing is in
Israel,
Israel. I really do. I
it's
think
not
that
easy to demilitarize a region like that. It's not easy to demilitarize a community, a population that's just been scarred. Imagine every single person, or I can't remember the statistic, but the majority of people in Gaza have lost a loved one or a friend. The
yes,
majority, or
I,
had them injured.
yeah, but
There's a lot
Mario,
of hate and anger in those people. I worry that you cannot control that. And you know the saying, I can't remember which general said something along those lines, like for every terrorist you kill, you generate another three or four. So
yeah,
that's the worry that many people have, is that after October 7th, the two-state solution is kind of dead. But I'll let you, maybe you can respond to this, but also give me your thoughts on the risks of a war with Iran, because that's what everyone's looking at now. Has that
Okay,
diminished by how much, in your opinion?
it's all related. I'll get to that in a second. So what I'm trying to explain, remember how I told you there's these two extremes, and we speak to so many people from all spectrums. Um, and it's no longer like 3 or 4, it's 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 world leaders that we speak to are in that balance.